This Hosey Style has 1.32.
I started the stream. The stream is started.
Let it flow.
Let it flow. Exactly. As I was saying before, if anybody's watching at this particular point in time, I'm much of a Luddite, so I have to employ my girlfriend for free to actually set up the live stream since this is the inaugural live stream. So I just want to say thank you very much, Christopher, for joining me today on the Holsey Style. I know that you are a busy man.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So for those who are not acquainted with you or your work, can you tell us who you are and what it is that you do?
And my name is Christopher Lee. As you said, you may have seen me in such feature films as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where I play Saruman. That's the intro I do with my students all the time. I am an academic, as maybe the name of my channel, Gentlemen Scholars Club, suggests. I'm currently a dean overseeing undergraduate and graduate English at a large online nonprofit university. I teach literature courses. I started as a medievalist, did my PhD in English and comparative literature with a focus on medieval literature, France, England, Spain, looked at medieval drama, funny works from the Middle Ages. A lot of people don't realize there's funny stuff in the Middle Ages. Like, they think it's heavy, moralistic stuff, and a lot of it is. But I had to find some interesting, funny things in order to keep going with the PhD. So there is that, and I've taught a number of literature courses, graduate and undergraduate, as well as writing courses. That's my day job. As my side gig or my hobby, I run the Gentlemen Scholars Club since probably 2015 on Tumblr. The Tumblr site still exists, but I don't really go there anymore. I think it's sort of seeing a revival, Tumblr, I think. But I haven't been on there much. But I have the YouTube channel as well and Instagram page. And I do that sort of as an extension of teaching. The name Gentlemen Scholars Club is sort of captures, I think, that I wanted to put an academic, like a strong academic component to that content. So kind of an extension of teaching and talking about educating on clothing and making that kind of a dialogue with people.
So you did a terrific.
Which is the best way of teaching, right?
Yeah, precisely. Right. You did a terrific job there of kind of like splitting up the two parts that I want to spend some time talking about, because one of the things I find fascinating about you is that, much like me, you are a professor of English, or for you more specifically literature, but you also have this passion in menswear, right? So I want to spend some time talking about both those components of who you are and your life. But the first thing I wanted to start with is what you said about your introduction to your course. Do you normally set up like humorous breakings or what's the correct word? Do you find a way to break the ice with your students?
Yeah, icebreakers.
Yes.
Yeah, I try to be accessible. I think when you see my channel, or maybe even now, it's sort of my personality when I teach also. I've done online teaching for quite a while, so I haven't been in a physical classroom for maybe 5 or 6 years. So even before the pandemic, I was doing all online. Yeah, all online teaching. So I miss it because I've only done like asynchronous teaching. I haven't done any live teaching. So it's all recorded videos, and there's less opportunity, to use jokes and to kind of interact with people. And there's also less opportunity to dress up. If that's kind of a reason why we teach, also to sort of perform for an audience. A lot of teaching is performance, and I don't think people maybe don't think about it that way sometimes. But being in an online environment, that's kind of been a shortcoming. But I try to, like you said, I try to be engaging and make the content accessible that way.
Yeah, I like to start my first class. I usually start by saying very simply, "How you guys doing?" Right? And then usually, they'll mumble, "Oh, we're doing fine." And then I'll say, "Oh, you didn't ask me how I'm doing? Assholes." You know what I mean? Usually after I ask, "Oh, nobody asked how it is that I'm doing," I can respond, "Assholes." And usually everybody starts laughing. It's a good way to kind of like start off the course. But how do you think teaching primarily online has affected you as a professor? Do you think that it's affected your teaching at all?
Yeah, I guess a lot of it has to be concise. I used to teach business writing and web writing, which is supposed to be really concise. Like if people are reading business writing, they're going to read, they only want to read a little bit. Like if you do a job letter, they're not going to want to read 2 pages of job letter, want 1 page, short paragraphs. So kind of online teaching has a lot of the same elements. We have to really compress things. So it has to be an announcement that's a paragraph or a few paragraphs to break it up with images these days. So it has to look like a website, essentially, a web page. And if I do video content, it has to be short also, which I think is sometimes the principle on YouTube, right? 5 minutes, 10 minutes max attention spans. You have to consider those sorts of things. So definitely a lot of adjustments at the beginning doing that.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume that you don't mind it as much given that you've done it for the last 5-6 years. For me personally, I hate it during the pandemic. I hate teaching online, particularly for literature classes. With composition classes, it's not so bad because, you're more talking about like how to, set the rules for how to go about writing. Whereas with literature, like in order to make sense of a piece of literature, a lot of the value in the class comes from actually listening to your students and trying to understand their interpretation and you engaging in a dialogue with them. That's what makes the process kind of like really, really rich. So I really despised it, particularly for my literature classes. The composition classes aren't too bad, but I, as a person, am just kind of extroverted. At least in my profession, I would say that I'm extroverted. So I kind of really need to be around people.
And I think that with literature, you need to have that interaction. Usually there's a discussion forum or something in an online class where it's the student types something up like a mini essay, and then the instructor, the professor writes something back. And a lot of times they're not required to respond again. There's not that same give and take. In the classroom, obviously you can coax them to say more and go back and forth. But if it's typed and it's not a specific requirement for them to answer like 2 or 3 times, answer the professor or anything like that, then it can be challenging to get that to kind of coax the interpretation of literature out of them. Like they need to be asked questions and then delve into something. And then on a related note to that, stuff online, I have this theory that stuff online is webified for students. So they expect in an online class to see something like the internet, like a web page. So with literature, like they're supposed to read deeply, they're supposed to read slowly. If you go online, you don't do that sort of thing, right? You read quickly, you skim, you want to get in and out, which is very different from how you would read a literary text. So they don't get that same rich experience unless they train their brains to do that deep reading, but online, where it's not usually what they would be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a terrific book, I believe, by the author Nicholas Carr. I think it's titled
Yeah.
What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, and he more or less discusses that. It's really fascinating as a professor of English to see what it is that this short attention span has done to students and their capacity to really interpret and, well, digest larger pieces of literature. I suspect that most of my students aren't doing the reading. They're getting cliff notes or summaries somewhere, I suspect.
And I guess online, there's things like Course Hero where they can get papers. It's easy to plagiarize too. The technology has made it easy for students to cheat. So it's another challenge.
Yeah. So despite the fact that you have been teaching online for the last 5-6 years, you decided nonetheless that you were going to pursue classic menswear. So talk a little bit about that. So how did you become passionate about classic menswear? Why did you choose to continue to dress up during the pandemic when nobody really had to? And kind of like what were some of the motivations for you to start a YouTube channel?
So for me, I was reading an interview with Andreas Wienas a while back when he said I started with menswear really late, and he said something like when I was 24. For me, it was much later than that. I probably started around 2015. My wife and I took a trip to Italy, and I remember being online in a Hertz rent-a-car in Milan, and I was wearing a T-shirt, sandals, and a pair of regular jeans, and all the Italian guys around me were wearing, sport coats. They were more tailored, and I felt like extremely underdressed. It was kind of like a epiphany for me to realize that I had not been dressing well. And so I started getting interested. I initially bought Italian items because we used to travel to Italy a lot. And looking back on it now, it's not the best choices. Like it was really super tight, bright colors, probably a size too small to kind of like what a stereotypical Italian style would be, not in the positive sense. Then after that,
It sounds,
I went into suit
I
supply.
apologize for
Go ahead.
interrupting, but it sounds to me like you're describing probably everybody who's listening, their experience with menswear. We seem to all
Yeah.
have started the same way. But continue.
And internet, you want to dress like the internet when you start. It was Tumblr again back then. So just looking at what people were wearing. And then I guess when you dress for the internet, you're dressing for publicity, attention, followers, and so forth, which is not the same as real life, but something we need to learn gradually. Then I went to Suit Supply, which is usually again another gateway for most people. I think affordable and kind of good styles overall, good fabrics anyway. But that was too slim. And I've gradually been working on developing that. But in terms of connection to academia, I would say there seems to be a lot of academics. I bet you in the audience right now there are a number of listeners who are or viewers who are in academia. And there seems to be a lot of overlap.
We probably
beyond,
attract them.
Yeah, you and me. I mean, I know Alex Vetkovich is a medievalist. He does a lot of menswear things in the UK. And Instagram, there's Blue, Brown, and Gray. I forget. I think that was his handle on Instagram. Another a business professor. So there seems to be a lot of connections there. I think I've been thinking about it for a while too, that maybe it requires a lot of intellectualization to think about how to put pieces together, to study the history of menswear. So there's that component to it. I think that's where the overlap is for me. And also being in the humanities, so being in a field where there's art and literature, I feel like the reason I dress really is to make art in a sense, like to be an artwork. So just to test out color combinations and kind of aesthetic theory. So to me, it's very much an intellectual process. Beyond that, I just like to project sort of authority and respect in the classroom, not to be
The online
imposing
classroom. I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah. In face-to-face too at the beginning, like I had a little bit of time when I dressed up in the face-to-face environment, and then online too. Like you make a video, you might as well present yourself well on the video in terms of your appearance.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, you want to have the students to give you that authority, especially online. Online, no one has authority. Everyone is equal. So if you want to convey like I am professing now, then I guess dressing up helps with that. And you can still be accessible. Like I still converse in this style. I still use jokes and icebreakers, like you said earlier. But combining that with dressing up, I think, is a sort of a perfect way of presenting that mixture of being accessible, but also saying, I know what I'm talking about when I'm lecturing, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said a lot of interesting things there. I want to take a little bit of time to break some of them apart. So you talked a little bit about when you first started getting interested in menswear, there were some pitfalls with dressing for the internet. So what are some of those pitfalls?
I guess the internet, in order for people to look at images, they have to be really eye-catching. There's so much out there that people need to try outrageous combinations, combining 4 patterns, which, I mean, it can work, but it's also kind of not what you would see every day. It's not really my style, but I think the pitfall is to try to dress to take an Instagram photo and to get attention. And in everyday life, you want to dress to look professional, but not to have everyone sort of turn around and stare at you and look at your outfit, as opposed to looking at you and getting your ideas and what you're talking about. That's probably the number one pitfall, I would say.
I hear that. I apologize for interrupting, but I hear that all the time. And I really want to call it into question, because I'm thinking like our modern style is so dressed down and so casual that even if you just, like wear something like I'm wearing here today, you have a double-breasted sport cut on with a rugby shirt, jeans, socks, and loafers, right? Like that's going to be considered extremely dressed up. So I wonder, in our modern dressing environment, for lack of a better phrase, whether it's actually the case that you can dress in such a way that you're not going to be noticed and at the same time dress professionally.
Um, it's fair. I would say maybe then modifying it to say that you would also want to dress for yourself first, the way you want to look, as opposed to dressing for specifically for the attention.
Yeah.
So that might be the qualifier. And so, like, if that's your style and you want to be, really colorful and have a lot of patterns, then you do you, as they say. But
As they say.
yeah, but like that shouldn't be dressing for others shouldn't be the reason specifically to get that attention, I guess.
Yeah, the primary motivation.
Yeah, like dress to be comfortable, dress to represent yourself the way you want to.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder, this is just a thought experiment and it's completely hypothetical and impossible, but it would be interesting to do kind of like a meta-analysis of the way that the Instagram algorithm has actually like shaped menswear and men's style. Like, again, I think this is entirely hypothetical and probably impossible, but I wonder, like, what effect has social media had on menswear? Like, what have been the specific consequences on style? Just a hypothetical.
I'm thinking now of double monk straps, which I do wear, and what else? Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind. So sort of things that were trending. Oh, pocket squares, I guess, were a big thing, and now supposedly they're not. So I'm not seeing them as much. So yeah, there must be that connection for sure, that influence. Instagram influencing the influencer, I guess would be
Yeah, exactly. It's a dialectic or something.
Mm.
So spend a little bit of time talking to me about your your YouTube channel specifically. So you started your YouTube channel about 2 years ago. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, roughly.
Okay. So what was the motivation for starting a YouTube channel?
Not getting enough interest on Instagram, probably. I'm going to try another venue to get the content out there. So I found the video picked up more quickly, and even now, like on Instagram, Reels, the video aspect will get more, not followers or likes or views or whatever, than the photo feed. So I think that video seems to be the latest thing in terms of getting the content out there. As I said earlier, I want to make it kind of an extension of teaching, not being like I know everything and I'm telling you how to do it, but kind of sharing what I've learned over time in a conversational way. And it's an extension of teaching too, right? Because like maybe I missed lecturing in person, and so that's enables me to create more content, more videos. I suppose I could do lecture material on medieval literature or something like that. Like there are people who put out academic content on YouTube. That may be a future thing, but it's also less stressful. It doesn't require as deep an amount of thought, and it's not as dry. It's more accessible. It's kind of stress releasing and relaxing too when you do a lot of thinking and academic work, to think about something else and to present in a different kind of register, so doing the discussion of style and stuff like that. And if I buy something or if I see something I like, then I might as well share that information out for the public.
Yeah, you said a couple things there that are interesting. I like your approach in that you are not treating yourself as kind of like some prophet of style. You're not coming down from the mountain and handing down the 10 commandments of style. I've struggled myself with that component of being on YouTube because I, probably much like you, don't necessarily consider myself to be an expert in style. I don't consider myself to be an expert. I consider myself to be an enthusiast, which is to say that I'm passionate about it and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it, and I make mistakes as I go. And I like to share some of the mistakes that I've made personally, right? Those are the things that I talk about. But how do you kind of like balance between, on the one hand, being on YouTube and knowing that the primary kind of content in men's style is for you to actually like give rules about how people are supposed to dress, and doing more of the content like you produce that's a little bit less rule oriented, I suppose?
It probably goes, now that you mention it, I'm thinking that it goes back to composition teaching. When I taught composition, like, you're not supposed to like use the red pen and tell people this is wrong, you don't know grammar, this is wrong, right? It's more like, can you take a look at this sentence and tell me what it means, or where is your thesis? Explain to me. So it's not like you're saying this is wrong, this is how you're supposed to do it. It's more like student-centered to encourage learning. So it's again that conversation. It's even like a Socratic conversation, right? You're asking questions that people are thinking and answering back. And so I want to make people think about the content rather than dictating stuff. And I guess today is, like, I guess the sort of the trend or the ethos is that you're not telling people these are the rules of menswear, but like these could be rules, but you don't have to follow them necessarily. Like you can learn them, but not necessarily follow them if you do it in a way that shows that you do know the rules. So like not dictating something as being wrong. And I think the internet invites a lot of that in terms of trolling. Like if you go in Style Forum, or if you go and look at the comments to people's stuff, it's like, your outfit sucks, or I can't believe the legs on your pants are so large, but if that's the person's, again, being true to themselves, that's what they like to do, then it's not wrong. It's not something I would wear, but it's not wrong. It's something that they like. And if it's, wrong, they'll learn later to change it. But it's not my place to tell people that necessarily, just to kind of put out general concepts and have them decide what to do. A lot of people, I think, know what they already have a certain style. And so I don't think my telling them would necessarily change their minds either, maybe.
Yeah, it's really interesting on YouTube, and I also noticed this tendency on Instagram Reels as well. But the algorithm, so to speak, seems to really love like commandment type content. You know what I mean? 5 rules when you're wearing a suit, or whatever it is. And so like I've struggled with it myself personally when I'm thinking about like creating new videos. I can see what's really popular on YouTube, because if you have a program like vidIQ, you can see what's trending and what isn't. And most of the stuff that is trending in the menswear space is that kind of commandment type video. And so I'm like, man, should I create this commandment style video? Because I'm probably going to get blessed, so to speak, in the algorithm. Or do I more or less try to stay true to my ethos, which is something very similar to yours, where I'm just kind of having a more personal approach, a little bit more subjective, as opposed to like laying down objective rules?
For me, the most popular videos I have are how to make a loose turtleneck fit better, and how to make loose loafers fit better. So I guess people have a lot of loose items that they want to shrink down or something. But those to me are more basic, I guess. It's similar to like,
practical.
Here's how you do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess as an academic, I like to talk about niche things or more esoteric stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but those don't get obviously not going to get as many hits or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult balance.
That's the same way with me, but it's like at the same time, it's like, how do I put it? You're trying to find your voice, so to speak, on YouTube and be authentic to you, but at the same time, you're trying to grow your channel as much as possible. And so there's that kind of like tendency, at least for me personally, when I'm thinking about new videos, like, should I do that? And then I feel almost oddly, I feel almost guilty. I'm like, am I in a position to tell somebody precisely how it is that they should dress? I mean, I probably know a lot more than the average person, but for the people who are involved in this particular space, I'm not some prophet or something. I can't tell you all the rules.
I mean, we could do, 15 different tie knots to do, but like I would personally only wear 4 in hand, or some double 4 in hand or something like that. But I mean, it's possible we could do that to get more viewers. I guess I sometimes I'm ambitious and I want to have increase of followers and viewers. Sometimes I think it's a hobby and I have a day job. So it's kind of that puts me toward the esoteric stuff, or the more philosophical stuff, the more theoretical stuff. But if, like you said, if you want to have more viewers, then you have to inject some of the more basic and like, here's how to do it
practical
specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess too, when you think about it, I mean, a lot of people are jumping on YouTube usually because they want to figure out how to do something. So it kind of makes sense. That's what people use the search engine for. Right. Yeah. So I want to return very briefly to your career in academia. So you said something interesting there that you are a specialist, medievalist. Excuse me, did I say that properly? Medievalist.
Yep.
Okay. So what drew you to medieval literature?
I probably grew up, I guess many young boys or young men like knights and that sort of thing. Probably like fantasy movies growing up. And I started reading mythology. So I've been very much ensconced in like the ancient world till the medieval era. I read a bunch of different things like undergrad, but when it came to teaching, I had to pick a specialization, and that came to mind. But my wife also loves that sort of stuff, and so she helped direct me in that direction as well.
Yeah. What are your kind of like favorite medieval works? I ask this as I am currently working through Saga of the Icelanders.
Oh yeah, I was just saw a video by Jackson Crawford. He does a whole Norse series of videos on Norse literature on YouTube. But I probably, like I said it in my intro, I've been looking at like the chivalric stuff, so the Arthurian, like the King Arthur stuff in French. Fabliaux was a big part of my dissertation. Fabliaux being essentially dirty jokes in the Middle Ages. I was saying that there is a lot of humor in the Middle Ages, and these are like short body tales that troubadours used to tell. They're called jongleurs or troubadours or troubert. And they used to tell these in the courts as kind of oral entertainment during feasts and other things. And they're pretty much scatological, sexual scatological jokes, but you can study them seriously. Right? That's part of your medieval training. And I remember once I took this as a grad student, and the professor brought his son into this class, the Fabliaux class. The son was like 12 years old, and I had to do an oral presentation, and I was using all sorts of profanity because these works are full of them. And the kid turned red. The kid was laughing. The professor, the father, also turned red. He was cracking up, and I was like, wait a minute. I just realized maybe I should have used euphemisms or something when I was doing my presentation. But he's like, no, go ahead and say what you want to say. So there was a lot of, the kid was, I guess he was happy to have a slew of profanity. But those are my favorite works in the Middle Ages.
As you were saying that, I was having a little bit of flashbacks. I think I actually had to read in a class, I think it was, I'm probably pronouncing this incorrectly, but the Decameron.
Ah, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
It's got some of those. Yeah, the Decameron, yeah.
Yeah, but that one is like full of body humor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my first kind of exposure to medieval literature prior to Chaucer. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Chaucer has some of those Fabliaux in there as well, like the Miller's Tale.
Yes.
Other things.
Yeah. It's been so long since I've read Chaucer. It's been over 5 years. He was very difficult. The medievalist who worked in the department at the university that I got my master's at, he loved himself some Chaucer, but he had us read it. He had us read it as probably typical. We were reading it in the original English, and it was very, very difficult to understand.
What are you learning from the Norse sagas? What are you reading about?
So I'm only on the first saga, which is Egil's saga, Egil. I'm about, I don't know, I think I'm like 50-ish pages into that one. It's very interesting that their literature is kind of very Spartan, very stoic. There's not a lot of adjectives. The characters are not complex. At least, a narrator doesn't describe what's going on with them internally. So they seem on the surface to be not psychologically complex, although they certainly are in their motivations and their social structure, etc. But so far, it's just been really, really interesting to see how it is that the tales are told, because I've gone through like 7 generations of different Nordic people before we've even gotten to Mr. Egil, who's supposed to be the person of the saga. But yeah, I don't think I've gone far enough to really have any kind of cohesive thoughts.
It's a lot of the interesting stuff about medieval and earlier, I guess, is how much it's tied up to oral telling. Like it's written down for us because it survived that way, but a lot of it was told and retold by different storytellers. And they would add stuff. They would take pieces that were entertaining from other authors and bring them in. They would change it if the audience responded positively to something, like similar to a YouTube video, I guess. If the audience responded positively to certain content, they would use that in their future retellings. So very much, I guess there's some overlap there with the YouTube stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's no coincidence. It seems the stories, I was thinking about this earlier today as I was reading through one of the sagas, they seem very kind of biblical, I would say, because there's kind of like an insistence on flushing out like the lineage, you know? This was the father, this was the grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. This is the lands that they had, right? It seems very biblical to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, they call that the begats. So-and-so begat so-and-so.
Yeah, I believe so.
Of people.
Yeah, they don't actually use the word the begat in the sagas, but they did do that, of course, in the Bible. But that's the idea. I'm like going through all these different generations of Vikings, and I'm like, when do we get to the main character, the main one in the saga? Yeah. So I forgot to ask, what are you wearing here today?
I got this. I've been doing a couple of videos recently about shawl collar cardigans, which is a mouthful to repeat in videos. Shawl collar cardigans, shawl collar cardigans. So I got this yesterday got in the mail from Balthazar, which is a Scandinavian company. It's a shawl collar cardigan from William Lockey. It's just wool. It's not cashmere. I think it's just wool. It's really fits well. I like the mid blue. Like I've talked about this on my channel too, that mid blue is better than navy blue because of the contrast. Like if you're fair skinned and you wear navy blue, I think it tends to wash you out. It also looks more sober and somber and formal. So I'm a big proponent of mid blue or sky blue. So it's my favorite color. I like the quality of it. Like it has the leather covered buttons. So I've gotten only ones that had regular horn buttons. This has the leather covered sort of football style button. And has the way it's constructed is really nice. Like it has a loop here that you can bring across and sort of fasten it, but the loop is hidden nicely in the lapel. I've got other ones where the loop is pretty big, so you can really notice it. And the button is also kind of placed artfully. I think it's almost covered by the lapel. I've got other ones where the button is out here, so it looks really strange if you don't button it. So I like that. I'm wearing my one-piece collar shirts. If you ask me like what was a characteristic of my style, I would say it's become one-piece collar shirts. This is from the Gardery in Hong Kong, who I get all my shirts from. They make them for me. I pick essentially Thomas Mason fabrics, and then they make the shirt to my size. It's a made to measure-ish kind of thing. And so I like that open collar because I'm not wearing ties these days, and I think you need to have like a collar that stands up, has some interest if you're not wearing a tie.
You said the cardigans from, did you say Balthazar?
Balthazar, yep.
Balthazar. Is that a
Baltzar? Yep.
Balthazar. Okay. It's a Swedish brand, is it not? I think I've visited their page
I believe so.
before. Okay. Have you ever purchased one of Spier Mackay shawl cardigans?
Yeah, I got the oatmeal Donegal from them, which is, I guess their selling point for sure is that they have quality things that are inexpensive. This was more than the Spier Mackay. So I've gotten the oatmeal Donegal and have a navy one from them. I like those. I did a video on the oatmeal cardigan talking about how to wear shawl collars. Yeah, so that I like that because it has Donegal flecking. And pretty close to where I am. Like I'm in Michigan and they're in Toronto, so we can actually go there occasionally and see their stuff.
Yeah. How much is the price contrast pretty high or?
This was $270. Spier Mackay, I think it was $248 before sale, and they do sales, so it goes down to under $200. I think they do like a 20%, 15 to 20%. It was like one of their premium items, I think, so they don't reduce it as much as other things. Like it may not go down to 25%, except maybe really end of season.
Yeah. I actually have two of their shawl cardigans. I have a black one and a brown one. It's kind of like it's a lighter brown. I thought when I bought it, it was going to be more chocolate. It turned out to be a little bit lighter, which I didn't like, but that's my fault. Yeah, I
Black
really,
is nice. I haven't seen
the
any black ones for a while.
yeah, the shawl cardigans are really versatile. Like I really like to wear them, of course. You could wear a t-shirt underneath them. I've also worn them with like a shirt and a tie. Or you could just have the
Hmm.
shirt. That's what I really love about them. And of course, they're really comfortable.
Yeah, you can open it, close it up,
Yeah,
two buttons, leave the top open, leave the bottom open.
I do
Varies.
have to say they do give off a little bit of the grandpa vibes. I get more than one
Yeah,
comment usually whenever I wear my shawl cardigan about me looking like a grandpa. So
that was my hesitation. Like I just started this year, but I'm middle age now, so I think it's excusable to go into that. So.
yeah, I am all of 33, so maybe it's a little too early, but I'm gonna wear my grandpa clothes nonetheless.
Mhm. I
So
mean, if it's relaxing, right? And I guess post-pandemic or pandemic-wise, that's pretty dressed up still, right? It's nice.
yeah,
And
wearing a shawl cardigan is definitely
yeah.
gonna put you in like the top 20%. So, how have you seen your style change over time? So, let's go back to your kind of trajectory. You talked about your experiences in Italy. I assume that you were traveling there for work. Is that correct?
Um, Probably vacation. It was holiday. Yeah.
Okay. So, talk me through kind of like your journey there from going from wearing a shirt and shorts and seeing everybody dressed up in Neapolitan suits and whatnot, and how your style developed over time.
Yeah, I guess the most I wore for when I taught in person, I used to wear like black trousers and a dress shirt with stripes, probably from Express or one of those companies. Um, and then when I went into tailoring, I probably went in like full hog and did like vests, waistcoats with ties, and everything was undersized, like one size too small,
About how
and
long
a lot
ago
of
was
bright.
this, just so we get a sense of like time? Like, how
Um,
far is this into your menswear journey, as they say?
Probably within the first few years, like 2015 to 2017 or something like that. If you go back in my Instagram feed, you'll see you can see the offenses of the past there. Um, and then I guess probably I realized I was over the top in terms of people around me. And like you said earlier, you're always going to be dressed better than others, but you can blend in a little bit more, I guess, for the purposes of where you are. And so I started toning it down a little bit more, like fewer bright colors, um, no more waistcoat. Like a three-piece is pretty tough to wear anywhere, I would say. And then gradually, I've been increasing the size, the comfort. I started with ring jacket, which has a fuller fit. So I've been trying to wear things that are a little bit more comfortable. Like I can go up. I'm a 38, so with Suit Supply, I was down to 36, and even 38 Suit Supply I found to be too slim fitting. So recently now I wear 38 Spier Mackay, 38 Contemporary, not the slim, with Ring Jacket, which is a Japanese brand. I usually do a 40, and it fits like a 38. I think I'm really like a 39 in terms of size. I'm trying to be more wear fuller fits without looking like it's too loose, so the shoulders have to be right and stuff like that. Got rid of the tie. A whole collection of ties. Have been going out gradually on eBay and Style Forum. I do have some I wear in the winter sometimes ties. But I'm trying to. I usually wear the open collar now, and a lot of neutral tones, I guess, in terms of color wise. I was going to say earlier that maybe my style is Italian influenced, which I think all of us are Italian influenced if we're doing this, but with Scandinavian colors, so like earth tones, browns, beiges, creams, and maybe filtered through Asian aesthetic. I think like the Instagrammers and companies in Hong Kong, like the Armory or Il Negozio, a lot of them are doing really nice styles. So I like that, and it kind of fits my build. I have an Asian background also, so I figured that works for me best. So that would be another thing kind of related to what I said earlier, which is to get stuff that suits you, like that looks good on you, that's comfortable, that's true to you, which would include like your body shape, skin tone, and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at now. But I get a lot of Spier Mackay because it's affordable. And I think like many of us, I tended to buy a lot of different things to experiment, to try out different color combinations and things like that. But now I've kind of settled into a smaller, narrower range of what I like and what I know works for me. So if I had a tip, I would say learn what your uniform is and then stick to that. You can experiment at the beginning and then sell stuff off that doesn't work for you. But eventually you'll realize, I like these colors, I like this sort of shirt, I like this brand, and then you'll kind of stick with that for the most part, with maybe some little tangential experimentation.
You said a couple interesting things there. So the first that I noted was that you called earthy tones kind of Scandinavian. I've never heard earthy tones described as Scandinavian.
I had to do I wrote for the Gentleman's Gazette for a while too, like the past few years. I've done about 60 articles and scripts for them.
Oh, wow.
And I was assigned to do, or maybe I proposed doing a thing on Scandinavian style. So I wrote an article on Italian style, British style, Scandinavian style. And in doing the research, I found that they really aim for earth tones based on the natural environment. Like Swedes, Norwegians like to go outside as much as possible. And then they wear clothes that kind of emulate the environment. So like, I guess similar to British tweeds, right? The British tweeds are designed to look like the countryside, but Scandinavians do that really well.
Yeah, I've always wondered why that is. Why is it an instinct of human beings to try to emulate their natural environment like that with their clothing? Because that's where I think that principle, like, don't wear brown in town, comes from, right? So the idea is brown, you'd see more brown if you were in the countryside, as opposed to in town where you're going to be dealing with more grays and more colors, right?
One thing I guess we don't think about these days is that a lot of the tweeds were designed for camouflage. Like now we think of camouflage, we think of the standard military camouflage, but 1920s or whatever, people wearing tweeds, houndstooth, Glen check is a way of blending in when they were shooting, I don't know, what are they shooting, pheasant or something. So there's that, I guess.
That's fascinating. Nobody's ever presented that to me. I never thought that like the patterns and such would be for camouflage. That's fascinating.
Like ferns and brackens and gorse. That's what I love is like thorn-proof. Like you look at the tweeds and they're labeled thorn-proof. So there's design. And you're like trying to get your dog out of the gorse to retrieve. A duck that you shot or something like that. But I think there's a concept in Scandinavia, I forget what it's called now, where like being outdoors is important, so that it kind of bled into menswear, into the way people dress.
Yeah. That thought is still sticking with me, the idea of it being I don't know why that's so revolutionary for me, but it's just like sticking in my mind. I'm just imagining all the different patterns, like Prince of Wales and stuff, and what that's supposed to like look like.
Yeah, it was strange too, because some of them you wouldn't think would be camouflage. Like the anthology has this tweed this year that has raspberry, like strawberry pink in it, and you can't imagine that would blend in anywhere. But if you see it from afar, it becomes kind of like a greenish, brownish thing, and you can imagine that if someone were in the brush, like they wouldn't be seen. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, except maybe if there were bushes with flowers or something like that on it. I don't know. I would never go hunting in a sport coat, so
I used to dress that way too when I used to hike in like a 3-piece suit.
Oh, really? Like, what made you want to do that?
Again, probably the internet, maybe ads. Like if you look at proper cloth, they're in Iceland and the model's walking around like on the fjords of Iceland wearing like tailoring. And so I thought that you could do that. And it's not really the case.
I mean, you can do it, but people are definitely going to look askance. The other hunters will definitely look askance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at classic British clothing, like even Ralph Lauren, or when they show people like going on hunting trips, in British wear. Nobody wears that. If you're going around English countryside, people are wearing, the waterproofs. They're wearing Gore-Tex and stuff. They're not going to wear tweeds and plus four pants that, with boots, where they're, those baggy pants like jodhpurs or whatever.
Yeah.
Not going to see that except in ads.
That actually tees up another question that I wanted to ask you, because you do quite a bit of traveling. Is that mostly out of pleasure, or do you go for scholarly work? What is it that you're doing?
Pleasure, I would say. I'm originally from New York City, and I'm now living in a place where there's not that much going on, I guess, culturally. So I use travel, especially, and there's long winters. Right now, there's snow on the ground. It's like 20-something degrees outside. So I'm using travel to experience, I guess, enjoyment, culture, good food. We always travel for food, try to try different cuisines and things like that.
But you spent quite a bit of time in England, right?
Yeah, any chance we can, go a couple times a year, and drive around. Usually we go to London to do the obligatory Savile Row, Jermyn Street, menswear stuff, and then rent a car and sort of drive around the country. And I remember the first time I drove a car on the other side of the road, like learning to switch. It was really difficult. Coming out of the rental car place, I hit something at a barricade. But now, after all this time, my brain has adjusted to switching between sides in the car. So, yeah. Kind of a random bit of information, but
yeah.
I wanted to share.
Do you spend any time when you go to England do anything like literary? Do you go to like Shakespeare festivals or anything like that?
I went to the Globe Theater, which was pretty cool to see that. It's hard to get tickets usually. A lot of times it's standing room only, and really challenging to stand for 2 hours plus for a play in a crowded arena. But yeah, that's fun seeing the Shakespearean actors doing it. They're the best actors in the world in doing Shakespeare, I would say. So yeah, definitely seeing that. Went to Canterbury. Speaking of Chaucer earlier, so saw kind of where Canterbury Cathedral was, and a lot of Chaucer stuff there in Canterbury. So yeah, we do try to cover the literary stuff. Jane Austen. We visited a lot of the Jane Austen places, like Jane Austen's house.
I love me some Jane Austen. The last 2 years, I actually spent time just like very, very, very slowly reading Jane Austen. I think I worked my way through I have a complete collection of all her novels, but I worked my way through Pride and Prejudice. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head the names of the other novels, or 2 other novels. But the thing is, for me, like, when I was in graduate school, and I'm sure you had this experience as well, like, it can be kind of tiresome for people to prescribe you reading. Like, and as soon as I got out of grad school, I just wanted to spend as much time reading, but just reading whatever it is that I wanted to read without anybody telling me how much I had to read of it and what I had to read, right? So, like, I decided to spend some time just going through and reading Jane Austen as slow as I basically wanted to. So sometimes that meant just, like, really taking in a page or 2 a day. Sometimes it meant 10, sometimes it meant 15. But I have to say that, and I say this knowing that there's a lot of books that I haven't read, so I'll just put it this way. At least in my experience as a reader so far, Jane Austen is the best author that I've read. I love her very much.
Yeah, I agree. Watched a lot of, my wife and I watched a lot of the film adaptations. They're pretty true to the books. I started reading Emma. We both started reading that, but I was interrupted by work. So you're inspiring me to go back and do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the traveling goes, do you think that it's really influenced your style at all? Like traveling to different places?
Probably made me more casual. Probably been more into knitwear and things like that. It's like if you go to a pub in the English countryside and you're really dressed up, like, or even, just with tailoring, usually you look out of place. again, that goes back to like anywhere we go, we'd be out of place probably, most places. But like maybe do more knitwear, like the shawl collar cardigan, which I haven't brought on trips yet, but probably will at some point. Doing like barber jackets over tailoring, so probably casual, but still, refined, and as a practical consideration of traveling. I do bring like 5 sport coats and maybe like 5 pairs of pants, 5 sport coats, and like 8 shirts each trip, and so like I've not been concerned with wrinkles or folding things properly. Kind of roll them up and bring them. I have like the single carry-on, and then a suit bag that I have the jackets in. I wear one jacket on the plane. Like I always wear tailoring on flights. So I think you can be comfortable wearing those. Like people are wearing sweatpants and stuff on the flights, but I would still want to wear tailoring.
Yeah. Is there a country you've gone to where they have, how do I put it? Have you gone to a country where they have, like just in general as a country, better style than perhaps the United States? Maybe I'm not phrasing this correctly, but is there a country you've gone to that's like your favorite for style? Do you like how the English dress, how the Italians dress? I mean,
probably it's more apparent in Italy, though I think not all Italians dress well either. They wear tailoring, but like I said earlier, it might be too tight or too bright for my personal taste. But I think they put attention into the way they dress more than any other places. In London, you don't see that much. Thinking cities primarily, because talking about countries, maybe less so than cities. Paris, don't see that much menswear being worn, a classic menswear, except for business. London, maybe similar. The most suits I saw in London was in the financial district where people were working. And I was actually wearing brown tweed or brown houndstooth in the city, and everyone around me was wearing gray or navy blue, as was proper to working in the financial sector or whatever. And I was buying lunch from a food truck or something, and it's like, I guess that's true. You shouldn't wear country clothes in London, or you shouldn't wear brown in London. That was like the only place that rule really stood out for me. But probably, Italy, people men tend to pay more attention to the way they dress up.
Yeah, I have to say that I am under-traveled for sure. And so I probably have an unrealistic expectation of how people dress outside of the United States. Like, for some reason, I just imagine a bunch of people in London being dressed in tailoring, but that is my ignorance shining through very clearly.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you are in certain cities and stuff. I've been sort of on the lookout. To see if anyone is dressed up well, and it's pretty rare still anywhere, I think.
Yeah. So I have a question about your fellow countrymen, half countrymen, I suppose. I don't know how that works with the dual citizenship. But are you familiar with Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, somewhat. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you paid attention to his style at all lately, by chance?
Haven't seen much. I think I saw one video talking about, I forget what it was now. It was something related to one of the courses I was teaching, but I haven't seen. Has it changed? Someone mentioned something to me that it's sort of changing. Is that?
Yeah, it's becoming I wish I could pull it up here. Maybe I'll do that in the future. I don't want to mess with any of the settings here and shut off on the live stream or something. But he's getting more. I want to be careful because I don't want to be like condescending necessarily, but he's becoming more, I suppose, playful with his style. Like, I think if you look back at some of the old Jordan Peterson videos, like in the 90s, early 2000s, he actually had decent style when he actually wasn't trying so hard. And a lot of his outfits lately have seemed very, very try hard. And he's getting really experimental with like tailoring. So there was kind of a thing that went around for, I don't know, it must have been 2 weeks ago, where he had a suit that was basically like two-toned. So he looks a little bit like the Joker or something. And just recently, he was wearing a corduroy suit I saw in an interview, and it was like a powder blue, and like the lapels were like cream, and then he was like wearing sneakers with the suit. And so his style lately has just been really odd, playful, but I just wanted to know kind of like what your assessment of his style is.
I wonder if he's gotten so big that he has a stylist has maybe changed, told him what to wear or something like that. Could be a thing.
Sounds like it's probably the case, and I know in one interview he had mentioned that he gets a lot of offers from people who basically want to make him suits. So I don't know if this is something that he's actually like doing deliberately on his own, trying to like change his style and be playful, or he's trying to even be symbolic, in some of his outfits, like having, a two-tone suit to represent heaven and hell, right? Kind of thing. Or if somebody's just telling him how to dress and mucking it up quite severely, I would say.
Yeah, I gotta be careful with stylists, I think, based on what I've seen or heard.
Do you have any experience with stylists?
No, I've just read about celebrities. Celebrities are dressed up for like the Met Gala, whatever stylists are choosing, designers or stylists are choosing their outfits, and not paying any regard, I guess, to maybe what would work well for that person.
Yeah. So another question that I have for you, this just came to mind. Do you have like a style icon? Is there anybody who you like look up to as far as their style goes, and you like really want to try to like in part emulate their style?
First person, I've been thinking about this. So the first person is probably Jean-Manuel Moreau, who is a French guy who runs a store named after, or a boutique named after himself. He does made-to-measure, bespoke type clothing in Paris. I've never met him. I've spoken to him on the internet a number of times, but his style is like what I try to do. So to me, I would say it is like still, it's not over the top, but it also has some edge to it or some pop to it. So he's probably the number one influence. Maslow So is a guy from Hong Kong, runs a company called Il Negozio, which he used to be with the Armory, I think, way back when, and he started his own company. So he does like a lot of soft tailoring, like linen suits. Sort of the lapels are the right size, in my opinion, like the softness of the shoulders. He's probably the second, and then maybe Andreas Vinas, who I think everybody follows the internet or follows hashtag menswear would know. He's sort of probably the third. Those are probably my top three.
Okay. So those are all people who are contemporary dressers, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more like, do you have any like influences from perhaps before your time? Any like Hollywood, any like actors or like well-known celebrities?
I just saw 3 Days of the Condor on a flight with Robert Redford, and in that film he wears this herringbone jacket. I just bought a gray herringbone finally a little while ago, and he wears one in that movie with, I think, a crew neck sweater, like a denim shirt, a navy crew neck sweater, blue jeans, and then this herringbone jacket. And then later in the film, he has this really nice navy pea coat that he wears. So everybody watch 3 Days of the Condor. Check out that outfit. Like the pea coat and the herringbone jacket are essentially characters in that film, I would say. So I don't really have a particular early influence. I could think about it more, but I just remember that film. That was really well done, I think.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I can't remember the last movie I saw with Robert Redford. There has to be one. I tend to love classical movies, so I'm sure that I've seen one, but nothing comes to mind at the moment.
I did an article on Paul Newman. I was assigned to write about Paul Newman's style. So I think he has good style. I wouldn't say that I was particularly influenced by him, but I think that's sort of the aesthetic overall that works in my mind. That's the way Paul Newman used to dress. Would be another example.
Yeah, you brought something up there again that I forgot to ask you about earlier, which is your career under the Gentleman's Gazette. So how did you come about being a writer for them?
I guess having the academic background, I just reached out to Sven Raphael Schneider, who runs Gentleman's Gazette, who the founder of that. I asked him, do you want me to write? How about I write some articles for you? He's kind of interested in, before the YouTube channel, kind of again putting out some educational content. So I thought that was a good venue. And he has like a million followers, million viewers on YouTube. So I thought that would be a good avenue to put out some content. So I approached him, and then he said, "Sure, let's give me an idea, pitch me an idea." I'd gone to the Queen's Garden Party in Buckingham Palace. I guess Canadians, you can put in this lottery and get tickets to attend a garden party at Buckingham Palace. So my wife and I applied, and they said, you won, or you got tickets. So we went there, had to rent a morning suit, the morning coat, with the gray morning coat, a top hat. And I attended that and wrote an article on it for Gentleman's Gazette with a rented morning wear. And then from then on, he's like, we like this, and keep writing articles and so forth. Used to be able to pitch articles. Sometimes they would assign stuff, which is why I eventually left. Like, I don't mind writing things that are assigned to me, but because of my other work, I really need to be like deeply invested in the topic to make the content. So like the videos, I do stuff that I really want to talk about, because otherwise I wouldn't really have the time to devote to it. So over a couple of years, I just put out these articles for them.
Yeah, that's really cool as a kind of apprenticeship to becoming basically, running your own YouTube channel. Like being able to write out those articles, like that seems like a very good foundation for, being able to have a successful YouTube channel in menswear.
Yeah, it's different. It's good. It's good to write things like general content. As academics, we write really arcane things like the dissertation. No one wants to read our dissertations. I doubt.
I didn't even want to read my own. That's why I didn't write one. I'm just kidding.
So writing for the public or whatever, if you write a master's thesis, you write a dissertation, it's really for very specific audience, like a niche audience of academics, very technical, jargony, but if you write for general public, you have the opportunity to stretch and kind of write accessible material, readable content. So that's appealing to me also. Doing it is in video and then writing it as well. I was thinking of, eventually creating a web page with written content. I just don't have the time to design one and set it up.
And it also seems too like, I don't know, I was talking about this before the live stream started, but you have a capacity to really speak fluidly on the topic. What's remarkable about your YouTube videos is that you don't really edit very much. So there's not these jump cuts. Like for me personally, I'm like an insane, crazy perfectionist. So like I have to like say things, sit in front of a camera and say things 20 times to get it exactly right. Whereas you're able to just go up and do it once. And I'm like, man, I wish I had that ability. I could probably put out a lot more content if I could speak like him.
Part of it's a function of being busy again. So I don't have the time. I have so many things in terms of academic administration that I don't have the time to do it. But I find my audio. Some people have complained about the audio, so I've tried to work on the audio. I try to improve the lighting, so maybe some like a direction I take in the future. But it's difficult to do the audio for sure. I had a wireless mic, a lapel mic, supposed to be good quality, but it always had problems. Now I've got a boom mic that's out of view, which is a little bit better, but I still find like the audio quality could be better. So that's something I would like to work on. Probably have to do like sound processing or something. It always takes time, and a lot of effort.
So you have a boom mic attached to a camera?
I have a boom mic attached to an arm, like a whatever you call it, the arm that goes and it's hanging right above me.
Yeah, but as you're recording the video, it
goes into the side of the DSLR.
Right, and on the camera, you don't have it plugged into a computer. You're just recording just with the camera alone.
Yeah, I've got a camera and a tripod, and the mic going into it, wired into it. Yeah.
Okay, I see. I was just wondering about your setup because I was going to recommend having a a mic that you could actually like plug into your computer. I don't know if that's going to work with your rigging there, but that helped with my audio tremendously when I didn't rely on the camera or the camera speaker or another mic attached to the camera, but used one that I could actually attach to the computer. Like that might help you a lot. I could actually send you the link for the microphone that I use. I think I would recommend it. It's not too expensive and it seems to do a pretty good job.
All right. Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure.
So let me go ahead and read off some of the comments that are here. So those of you who are watching, if you want to right now, if you want to ask any questions of Chris, go ahead and do so in the live chat. I'm going to go ahead and read the ones that are already here. So Antonio Hobson says, hey, love what you guys do. Thank you very much, Antonio. And then Nolan Reichs, I believe that's how you say his name. He said, thoughts on this year's pity so far. So what do you think?
Seems like it's pretty. My first thought was it's pretty warm there now. It's like 50 degrees, but
is that warm?
People
50 degrees? That's freezing for me in California.
But the people there are sort of dressed for like 30-degree weather because I think they have to highlight, the winter collection that they have. So a lot of the industry people, are wearing turtlenecks with heavy polo coats, which I always favor as a look. But it seems like they're dressing for this winter collection rather than actual weather. That's kind of my first observation, seeing the initial photos. It's maybe a little less toned down, more toned down than usual, though, I think, the ones I've seen.
Yeah, I think I actually follow the pity hashtag on Instagram, and it seems pretty mellow. I'm used to seeing a lot of color, and it just seems in general like I haven't seen as much color this pity, but I guess that's to be expected because of the season, as you are suggesting. What do you feel about that event at all? Like, do you find it odd? Do you think it's cool?
I wanted to attend it. Never got a chance.
I think everybody in menswear probably secretly wants to attend it.
Yeah, I mean, if the certain brands and certain people, again, that you like, I would say those people would always do the same sort of thing, whether pity or not. Seeing different brands, like 100 Hands, I think was first became aware of them through like looking at the Pity Womo stuff, 100 Hands shirts. So there could be some good things in there. There's always sort of I guess there's a group of guys who do it over the top just for, again, getting attention for their brands or whatever. And then there are those who are something that I would want to follow, what I would want to wear. Just follow those people and sort of look at what they're doing.
Yeah, that's kind of been my general impression too. Like a lot of it seems to be usually over the top, but some of the people that I follow, they have really good style. So, like I particularly like Flannels and Tweed. I don't know if you follow him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he has pretty good
name,
style.
sure.
And it's usually understated. He's not too flamboyant, as tends to be the case with Pity. Alrighty, so those are all the questions I can see here. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I just want to say thank you very much, Chris, for coming on and speaking with me. I greatly appreciate it. For those of you who don't already follow you, where can they find you?
Gentleman Scholars Club on YouTube or Instagram, but probably prefer YouTube as my main avenue for content.
Gotcha. Is there any website? I know you had mentioned something about that before.
Not yet. Just the YouTube for now.
Oh, you were aspiring to have a website. That's correct.
Yeah, I'm planning.
Alrighty. So once again, just thank you very much for coming on, and thank everybody for tuning in and listening. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day to watch this live stream. Going forward, I'm going to try to do all of these interviews / conversations live, just so that you guys can have more access to the person that I'm speaking to. As you know, I used to pre-record them, but I think that puts a wall between the person I'm speaking to and the audience on YouTube. So just look out for the live streams going forward. So I can see here there's some other comments. Armand said, glad to see you here. Who are the best style icons in modern times? Thank you very much, Armand. Although I think that's a little too lofty, too high of a compliment, at least for me. Guillermo says, really enjoyed this live. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Guillermo. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and have a wonderful evening.
Good night.